Welcome to Rise and Realign Conversations for the Sensitive Soul. I'm Melissa, and this space is for those of us who feel deeply, love fiercely, and sense the world in ways that are hard to explain but impossible to ignore. Here, we honor your sensitivity as a strength, not something to fix. Well, last two podcasts, I had introduced my highly sensitive uh, series. It was a 9-part blog that covers the mind, the body, and spirit. So, um, the first part, was orienting you to what it actually means to be a highly sensitive individual. And again, this is using the research and lens that Dr. Elaine Aron had brought to the world in the early 90s. So there's ongoing research that supports this sensory processing sensitivity trait as normal yet invisible. And it's truly an innate survival strategy with evolutionary reasons because it is in over 100 species. In part two, we talked a little bit about, unraveling old beliefs, like how beliefs even get, um, you know, on that deeper subconscious level where it's under our awareness often, right? And especially living in a very hectic, chaotic world, um, it can be hard to recognize when these are activated and at play. But again, so important to understand because my view of being a highly sensitive individual is a form of sensory intelligence because our ability to take in more information than the roughly, you know, 70 to 80% of the population who don't have this sensitivity trait. There's a reason why we process things so deeply, right? Why we reflect on our experiences, why we have, um, this deep emotional response to what's happening, within our personal lives, within, the collective, as a whole. So, today I'm introducing, part three of that mind series. Um, it's called Breaking the Cycle of Repetitive Thoughts. But what I really want to speak to first is, remembering that your mind is your ally, it's not your enemy. And I know that that's not necessarily the view of all people. There, of course, is no view that we all probably could agree on. Um, I hope that's not true. But I know that so many of us have different views, and I love the work of David Hawkins and, understanding the map of consciousness because it helps us understand how different emotions we're experiencing actually, plays out across our view of ourself, our view of life. So it's really something that's important. When it comes to understanding how our mind works. But it truly is not the enemy. But I think that I know from my experience, right, as a highly sensitive woman and mom, right, and having been in long term relationships, there's so much activity in the mind, right? Like there's just so much to consider, right? There's not only what what you want and what you're experiencing, but you thinking about others' feelings and their experiences and what they may want. And of course, this is unique for all of us, right? And especially those of us who are highly sensitive, because, even with the women that I support, some may refer to their behaviors as people pleasing, and others have a different perspective on it. So, again, it still is all unique, and there's no right or wrong way to view it. And I say that because when we understand that, what we notice about ourselves or what we are noticing about others is really a reflection of the level of consciousness that we're at. And that can be um, different day to day, right? So, um, certainly just want to reorient us to your mind is your ally, it's not your enemy. And understanding that repetitive thoughts is part of, being human, but especially, as individuals who process things really deeply. And again, I say it comes from this heart that just has a depth of caring, right? Highly sensitive individuals tend to be conscientious. They tend to be considerate of others. They tend to actually think about others' needs and how to meet them, even if that person isn't aware and isn't asking. Um, Not saying that that's wise, because I've certainly lived my life doing that and I don't anymore. But again, that just speaks to how we're all having very unique experiences, and yours are totally, totally valid and important to honor, right? Like this is where comparison is one of the biggest mm, uh, I've heard somebody say comparison is the biggest sin. um, but I am searching for what aligns more with my perspective, which is comparison is presenting us with contrast. It's presenting us with, you know, yes, what someone else is experiencing that's different than ours, um, but not to invalidate our own experiences, right? And not to judge ourselves from those differences. But for me, I see it as a way to keep reflecting back to us, what really matters? What do we really value as an individual? So, as I was mentioning, repetitive thought patterns is often it's a challenge for highly sensitive individuals. But it's really important to understand that it doesn't have to control your life. This is where, for me, it's coming into right relationship with our mind, right? Understanding how the mind operates and how to be in relationship with it to honor it, the communication. And, when we are walking this, um, I call it the realigned journey, right? When we're walking this path of waking up to a lot of the information that was just under the surface. And again, whether that's, talking about consciousness, what's been in the subconscious programming, or whether it's talking about what's been held in that crystal, liquid matrix, the water, the fascia in our body, right? So it's it's creating space where we actually can breathe and be with the information, because when we start to slow down, right? When we take more moments to pause, or as I like to say, take a break and breathe love, just really And now's a great moment. Let's do that. Let's inhale through our nose and then nice exhale, long and slow out your mouth, and just let it all go, just release, relax. We really need these pauses, and not just once a week, we're talking every day. It's so essential, right? Like, pauses are not a luxury, right? Like, if we are not pausing, connecting with our breath and our body, and really bringing ourselves into the present moment, right? Like, your experience of peace and calmness just becomes some distant, destination. And that's not healthy for any of us. And this is why I'm really passionate about raising awareness for what it means to be a highly sensitive woman, right? I mean, our experiences are so different than the male population. And again, I'm I'm absolutely here to raise awareness about being a highly sensitive individual, which is equal between males and females. I want to make that really clear. And I so love and appreciate the highly sensitive men who I have had the opportunity to love and be in relationship with, and also those who have set um, really beautiful work into the world, whether we're talking about, well known artists, musicians, scientists, right? Um, and, of course, the work of Carl Jung, Swiss psychologist. But as a woman, you know, our our sense of relationship with ourself, with our mother, with our children, um, and with other women, it's very, very nuanced. I mean, there's so many layers to it. And, sometimes this cycle of repetitive thoughts, we might call it ruminating on something, right? Like, this really speaks to what really matters to you. Like, why else would, you know, you keep thinking about something other than there's value in it? It's a recurring message. Now, this isn't something that I've always known. It's certainly something that has been revealed through more space, more stillness in my own um, journey. And you've probably heard me say on other episodes, right? Like, I have a fascination with the mind, and I have since I was a teenager. Um, and working, in psychiatric wards, witnessing, really traumatic experiences for individuals in there, both young and, elder. It was very informative for what this, adult life would be like. Um, and losing, my brother to a motor vehicle accident, I certainly experienced a lot of repetitive thoughts, very curious about life and why this happens, why that happens, right? And I learned, that I wasn't always in company who could understand my curiosity, and this is what can happen to especially highly sensitive individuals, right? Is you discover that you have something that does recur, And somebody else who maybe you're sharing your thoughts or experiences with, they just can't meet you where you are. They either don't have an interest, right? Or they just don't have a reference point to even like follow you, understand you. Um, that still happens for me to this day. And so oftentimes, right, as highly sensitive women, if you are feeling like somebody doesn't understand you, whether it's a friend, a family member, um, or even a health professional that you are seeking assistance, with, it can get turned inward, right? Where then you start questioning yourself and thinking that there's something wrong with you. So, this is really about, um, again, breaking the cycle of the repetitive thoughts that are self judgment, right? Are self doubt, right? Like, this is really about you being able to tune into you and trust your own, inner guidance. And your body, which, I will be going into in the next 3 episodes, but your body has this sensory intelligence that is so essential to understand and connect with, right? Um, and, we can't talk about the mind without talking about the body anyway, because there is no separation, you know? Um, there is an absolute interconnectedness between the mind and the body, and that's not always talked about or understood. So, this is again me being real, being raw, sharing with you what I've lived, and what I'm passionate about, because I'm telling you, being a highly sensitive individual is something that, we didn't know, obviously, before the research shared it. And there's probably tons of individuals, I'm sure there is, where they've discovered a way to live their life outside of the mainstream, and really honor themselves. So I certainly am somebody who knows that, you know, it's not only looked upon as a burden or a challenge, right? Being a highly sensitive individual. And sometimes I see that in the individuals that I support, that, they see it as a curse. And I understand that. I really do, because there were certainly points in my journey where the pain was really intense. And I didn't know how to make it through. So I just want to honor you and your journey, um, because it's definitely a wild ride. You know, there's so much beauty, right? And love that I have experienced with the highly sensitive individuals, that I've been honored to get to know. But you know, there's certainly pain and heartache. That's that's where I sense my voice matters, because you know some people come into this life and they already stay true to themselves. They don't allow themselves to be influenced by others, and I don't even know if allow is the right word, um, because I certainly have someone really close to me who, I discovered, just, yeah, he's true to himself and an amazing human. But for more, I sense, when we don't have that loving environment that supports us and honors our sensitivity, and whether that includes having psychic abilities, whether that includes um, you know, the different Claires, right? Claire cognizant, Claire, um, the Claire, I don't even know the rest of them right now. My brain just kind of paused there. So I'm just saying, being a highly sensitive person, you can have different gifts. And if you're raised in a family that honors that and supports that, right, then it's way easier to navigate that than to be a highly sensitive person with, any kind of gift like that, and you're not supported. So, and the research does speak to that, right? Like if we are raised and we have a good enough childhood where we do feel loved, we feel supported, we have an easier time of navigating that. And that's not the experience of all of us. As highly sensitive individuals, some are born into families and situations where there is a lot of pain and heartache. Um, and therefore, there is more guidance, right, needed. And so I feel like that's really my message, right? Is that you're worthy and deserving of all the love and support you need. And don't compare yourself to anybody else's journey because no one else has walked the same path as you. No one else was, experiencing the same things that you were in all the different ages and stages of development. So, it really is about honoring your unique journey and path. And so I'm here speaking to the highly sensitive individuals, who are needing to be reminded, right? Your mind is your ally, not your enemy. Your body is sensory intelligent, right? And your heart is incredibly intelligent and deeply loving. And your own alignment, within yourself is what really is key to allowing the repetitive thoughts that may come to the surface for you to acknowledge them, give them a little space, you know. It's trying to push through and keep up with old patterns, old schedules, other people's needs that gets in the way. And so it's so important to just keep coming back to you, keep coming back to your breath and your body. This seems like a great moment to, pause. Take another nice deep inhale through your nose and exhale long and slow out your mouth, just releasing, relaxing, and letting go. And, as a reminder, we are here together to rise, reclaim, remember. Where the heart leads, the body remembers, and the soul awakens. And it's really important, for you to do what feels true for you. Because there's nothing you need to fix. Just keep noticing what's here for you. And if you feel that you would like to join me for a Zoom call, tomorrow, February 5th at 5 p.m. Pacific, And again, 2 weeks later, February 19th at 5 p.m. And again, 2 weeks later, March 5th. I'm inviting you to a moment to pause, a space to inquire. This is an opportunity to just come together, breathe, be curious about what it means to be highly sensitive, about what kind of, support you might find helpful. And I'll share a little bit about the Realign journey, a 3-phase spiral of healing and remembrance that I am offering again at the spring equinox. But there's nothing that you need to do. If this resonates with you, then I invite you to join me. You'll find uh, links in the show notes, but you can always visit realignwithmelissa.com/links, and you'll see all of my offerings there. But again, always tune in, take a break and breathe love. You're not alone. So take good care of you. Much love and light.